Cross to our Foreign Affairs editor, Maha Siddiqui, who's joining us on the phone line. Maha, good morning. There's no other way of putting it. It was a dark day of the scenes that we saw unfold in Kabul yesterday. Talk to us about how much do we know of the role of ISIS and ISIS-K behind the blast that we saw yesterday?
Well, it was in fact suspected that ISIS can utilize the situation of chaos on the ground, which was pushing a lot of Afghans to flee the country as well, and a lot of foreigners as well going to the airport to leave Afghanistan. They could use this to their advantage to carry out a terror attack, and that is exactly what happened. There was very specific, credible information that the U.S. had with regards to this attack, and despite that, this could not be averted. Now, I have learned from some sources who are aware of the security situation currently on the ground. There are, almost 3 layers, if we can call it, of checks and, in some sense, security as well, whatever you might call security currently in Kabul. The first is the checkposts that are being manned by the various factions of Taliban themselves. Secondly, there is also a layer very close to the airport of some remnants of the Afghan National Army. And then you have the U.S. troops manning the airport itself, the Hamid Karzai International Airport. So they are inside the perimeter of the airport, but their duty or security starts very much from the gates of the Hamid Karzai Airport itself. So despite these 3 layers being there, this attack was conducted. 2 blasts did take place, one at the gate and one near the Baron Hotel. What we are being told is that there were some other attempts to carry out these dastardly acts, which were in fact thwarted, but these 2 could not be. So you can see the manner in which ISIS has been plotting to use the situation.
Right.
And ISIS, on the face of it, on the one hand, the U.S. says that ISIS is a sworn enemy of Taliban, that they are on 2 different sides, but there are some assessments that say otherwise. They say that they are all hand in glove at some stage.
Maha, the biggest concern today is the United States has taken a very clear stand that it will stand by its withdrawal of troops. Taliban has also given a deadline that there will be no extension. In all of this, what has happened is the Afghan people, the nationals, the locals, they've become collateral damage when no one seems to be talking about what the future will look like.
Yes, that is very true. And we have seen the Taliban put out a very stern warning to the Afghan nationals, saying that they don't want any Afghan national to leave Afghanistan till the 31st of August. They have decided on behalf of the Afghans who can and who cannot leave. And therefore, it is almost impossible for them to leave Afghanistan at this juncture because the checks are there in place by the Taliban. The checkposts where the Taliban militia are standing are checking the identity of those who are being allowed to travel towards the airport. Meanwhile, these are not the only signs of desperation. Yesterday, there were some pictures on social media now, and they were talking about how the entire attention at the moment is on the Kabul airport. But if you take a look at the pictures coming in from Spin Boldak, this is a region that borders Pakistan. You can see a sea of people sitting there as well. These are Afghans who are choosing to, in fact, go to Pakistan and not be in Afghanistan. I mean, look at the choice that they have to be in either of these 2 countries, both not being safe for them, but they are choosing that country because of the desperate situation. So this is the kind of sentiment right now all around in Afghanistan from what we are picking up by way of speaking to people over telephone calls.
Maha, I'll request you to stay on with us. We want to play out another report. Now, ISIS-K has formed cells in Kabul, which have carried out a number of devastating suicide attacks in and Kabul since 2016. CNN's Nick Patton gets us more on this.
Yeah, I mean, since we first broadcast pictures of them, I think it was about 2016 in Afghanistan, they have sort of grown essentially by harnessing what seems to be the youth who are disgruntled perhaps with the Taliban. They're a very long-lasting insurgency now. A lot of their sort of elders, a lot of the government structures they have don't appeal so much to sort of the younger, more radical extremists. They seem to have harnessed some of them for a period of time out in the east. They actually held territory that was pushed back by the Afghan army in about 2018. 2018, one of the largest bombs ever dropped, non-nuclear, by the US military was on an ISIS network of caves. But since the attacks on those areas, they seem to have concentrated less on geography and more just on the sickness of what they can do in terms of the ghastly attacks they carry out. I've reported on attacks they've done against the Shia ethnic minority here, the Hazaras, where they've attacked processions of people, utterly gruesome scenes where they simply have gone straight into the most densely populated areas they can find. Quite similar to today's tactics, sadly. A lot of the times ISIS seem to be blamed for things. ISIS-K, that's ISIS Khorasan, which is sort of an ancient term for Pakistan and Afghanistan. A lot of the things they're blamed for, some analysts suggest may actually be other rogue groups like the Taliban or even Al-Qaeda doing things and then blaming ISIS as kind of the crazy radicals out there. But at the same time, too, the attack today was redolent of their sort of complex tactics. They go into a very densely populated area. They detonate one blast. The CENTCOM Commander General Mackenzie talked about gunfire after that as well, and a secondary blast. You have one more thing that's interesting, just to think about the kind of ingenuity we're dealing with here. It appears that this attacker was able to kill a horrifying number of US personnel, and that must mean the bomb was detonated in a relatively small space. Now, I've been near Abbey Gate. It's unlikely, I think, that the Marines would necessarily have come out, given what we know that they're selecting individually people to come over that gate over the last day or so. So it does suggest possibly this individual may actually have been picked out and brought into what we know is the search lane there, a much more densely crowded area where possibly a device could have gone off to greater devastating effect. I'm speculating here, but that is, of course, part of the puzzle they're trying to piece together now. How exactly did this extremely ruthless suicide bomber get to that particular point to cause this sort of devastation, given how well defended at that point so much of the airport already was?
Maha continues to be with us. Maha, you know, the United States has already been under a lot of criticism and pressure as far as the decision of withdrawal is concerned. Now, with the twin blasts that rocked Kabul and with the intel agencies and experts pointing out the United States had been warned about exactly this, fair to say this will be a very challenging and dark time as far as the Biden presidency is concerned and could pose some very real challenges going forward?
The real challenges immediately for them are evacuation itself, Ridhima. Evacuation is continuing for American citizens, their Afghan allies and partners, whom they need to pull out immediately from Afghanistan. We've seen all the sides, all the Western countries putting it out very clearly, be it the United States or the UK, saying that the evacuation process is going to continue. They are giving very specific instructions to their citizens now. In fact, yesterday itself, 12 hours before these blasts occurred, we saw very specific instructions coming in from US, UK and Australia, near identical advisories asking their citizens not to reach the airport unless and until they were given further specific instructions individually. So they were well aware of the threat of a possible ISIS-like attack, a terror attack, and therefore the immediate concern, of course, is evacuation. And post the 31st of August, the concern will be about those who are left behind, because the numbers for Americans are still quite a bit on the ground. Whether or not they'll be able to evacuate all of them by 31st August is also a question right now. Also, the Taliban have refused to extend that deadline, and the US has now made it clear in the G7 summit that they are also not looking at extending this, because their fear is that beyond 31st August, Taliban, which sees the US and other Western nations as occupational forces, the Taliban themselves will start attacking the US forces. So they need to get out by the 31st of August, the deadline that has been set.
Maha, thanks for getting us all those details.